Well, good morning, friends. Coffee with Carl, number 37. And here we are, almost to 50, which is pretty cool. And again, I cover the same stuff in the beginning of these, but I just want to express how grateful I am to the comments, the kind of conversation that we get to have, and it's just, it really means a lot, and I don't ever want to neglect thanking you for the engagement and interaction. And I like to feel that maybe we have this little community that has turned into something. It's very rewarding, and I hope that this can be sort of a bit of an outlet, right? I mean, we talk about clothes, which are, unless you're in the clothing industry, not all that serious. This is stuff that we like, we enjoy, high quality stuff that's going to last for a long time, or at least look cool for a while. And there's a certain joy in that. And it's funny when you think back, I wonder if you have the same experience I have. I remember specifically the way that I felt when I actually had a custom suit made. And this was early on. I was lucky enough to know somebody who was pretty well off. And one year, I think it was for my birthday, they said, we're going to go get you a suit because you're going to need it for weddings, funerals, maybe even job, interviews and stuff like that. This is before I became an electrician. And so he took me to a local tailor and got fitted for a suit. And the suit, I remember, it was a navy with a very light blue pinstripe. So it wasn't like, like mafia style, like chalk stripe or anything like that. It was a pretty buttoned up business type looking suit. And I was never, I was never comfortable in dress clothes ever since I remember when I was a kid, going to church or whatever. And that feeling of a tight collar and, the tie and the whole thing, it just felt very restricting. And, ever since I was little, I never liked dressing up. It was never fun. And, all through high school, of course, my uniform was basically jeans and a band t-shirt, and that was it. Well, of course, we're shoes and stuff, you know what I'm saying? But that was it. And then I finally started getting into my 20s, and I was like, you know what? It's time to grow up. I got to start looking at dressing better. But that suit, I remember specifically when I put that suit on, the way it felt. It was almost like, it was transformative. To me, it almost felt like I had grown 3 inches taller, and I just had this feeling of like, oh man, like this fits well. I know that it looks good from the outside, and I don't know, man. It was a very life-defining moment for me. And so this was what I'd say, maybe early 2000s, if I had to guess. And since then, I've sort of been chasing that, and then I got into the whole like dapper wormhole. And in the early days of YouTube, there really wasn't a whole lot out there. I remember a channel called The Art of Manliness, which I think was actually a website first, and I believe that website is still going strong. Some really cool stuff on there. But I remember seeking out that website because I was looking for how to fold a pocket square. And I was like, oh, wow, finally, this place, now I could get this information online. And then, of course, that led me to people like Brock McGough of The Modest Man and Aaron Marino and Real Men, Real Style. And, that kind of era. Oh, and of course, let's not forget the Gentleman's Gazette, right? Really good one. And so that era of YouTube style influencers, right? And now I was still kind of feeling I was like I was living a double life, right? So I was working as an electrician, but yet I was really into clothing and the way that it made you feel, the way it made you look, the sort of expression that you get from dressing a certain way, and then people's perception of you. It's as much psychology as it is anything else. There's a reason that you dress up, to show respect to the people you're going to see and the place that you're going to go. And a lot of people, I think, they are intimidated by those types of things. And so they just say, well, I'm not playing that game. And then they hide behind the whole, well, you know what? A real man doesn't have to care what he looks like, or, that's for dainty fellows, or whatever, name your bullshit. And, so I think a lot of people hide behind that kind of machismo, right? But as I've described before, it's almost like there's a game being played around you all the time, and whether or not you choose to participate is on you, but it's still being played regardless of what you think. So being able to adjust your appearance appropriately was a very good skill. So fast forward to 2015. And that was the first year that I was like, all right, well, I want to take this to some sort of a next level. And I attended something called StyleCon. And this was in Atlanta. It was put on by Antonio and Aaron Marino. And it was like this gathering of people who were sort of into this stuff, this kind of community. And I can't remember how many people were there in the beginning. I want to say maybe 75, something like that. And I met a lot of very interesting people. It was cool because, you know, finally here I am in this environment where there's a whole bunch of people who feel the same way I do, who are sort of seeking the same types of things. There was no, you know, like gatekeeping or anything like that. It was a very welcoming, warm environment. And, you know, it's funny because now I look back, and that was nearly 10 years ago, and we've sort of entered another generation of style and all that stuff. And, you know, even when you look at you know, Aaron Marino's channel or Antonio's channel, they're not the same as they once were. I think that, you know, of course, when you get past a certain level of like 101 style kind of stuff, it changes. And I also believe that COVID had a lot to do with the way that things went, as far as the way people dress. It was just like this super casualization of people's wardrobes. And, you know, so I think that sort of, in a way, was kind of the final nail in the coffin of the people who enjoy dressing up in more formal attire. And it ushered in this new era of workwear or streetwear or more casual styles, whatever you want to call it. And this is also supported by Dan Trepanier, who used to be, he was America's Best Dressed Man in Esquire magazine one year. He had a company called Articles of Style, which I remember reading the Style Blogger, which was what predated that, and then Articles of Style. And it really leaned into that whole kind of idea of like this more laid back tailoring, right? It was still based on a lot of, you know, suit jacket tops or blazers and, you know, high rise, slimmer cuts, stuff like that. And this was right in that whole like slim era. And, you know, that was going well for him for quite a while. And then it changed from a content creating website to they're going to make their own suiting. And now, even if you go there, it's hard to find any content at all. It's really based around like selling you clothes. But I remember when COVID was happening and Dan and I were still in contact, and he was telling me that, you know, oh boy, I really don't know what's going to happen here. Nobody's ordering suits because everybody's staying home. So nobody wants this stuff. And so he was like, I think we may have to get into a little bit more of a casual style. And I'm not really sure where he landed with that. Once upon a time, it was this sort of group of these three guys, and it looked like they were always having fun. They were these New York guys, and it was like you kind of tuned in also just to be a part of that group virtually. And that has since disbanded. Those guys have gone to do their own thing, and it's too bad because, again, it was this old era of things that I really enjoyed, but, you know, things change whether you want them to or not. So after StyleCon, you know, that first StyleCon was what kicked me off to saying, all right, you know what? I'm going to start a channel. If you look back at my very first video, it was about a brand that I had met the owner at StyleCon, Anson Belt. And I was like, oh, this is the coolest thing. This like ratcheting belt and everything. It was really interesting. And I remember wearing those even at my day job, right, as an electrician. And I was like, man, these things are great. You can adjust them, whatever. I got one for my uncle. My uncle he's one of these guys, he like wears everything on his belt, you know, so he's got his Leatherman, he has like a cell phone thing, he's got everything, you know, and he put that thing through maybe like 3 years of use, and it still worked perfectly. So it was pretty cool. But, and then it wasn't until a little bit later that I started sort of talking more about my own experiences with workwear, and it leads us to the era that we're at today. So I think it's sometimes fun to look back and say, how did I get here? You know, how did you start being interested in this type of, you know, clothing or clothing in general? You know, it up until very recently, it was kind of a higher, I don't want to say high class because that's not the right word, but to care about what you looked like was sort of a luxury reserved for people who could afford fine tailoring. But nowadays, you can get a lot of really great stuff off the rack. And if you know your fit, or if you have a good tailor, or if you can even do adjustments and alterations yourself, you can make yourself look pretty damn good. So it's interesting. And I like to follow those things. I like to look at historical trends and the way things go. And I really enjoy it. So anyway, that's why I'm here. And I'd love to know why you're here. You know, like what brought you to this? And it's becoming more popular, which I think is a good thing. Guys taking pride in what they look like. And, you know, it's interesting. So please let me know. If you care to share, I would love to hear your story in the comment section below. But anyway, there are some new releases this week. So let's talk about those. All right, first up, Pure Blue Japan came out with something that almost made my jaw drop. I'm a sucker for green. If you don't know that already, I really love green. And they had come out with a green sashiko. So this is Pure Blue Japan 6118 OLV Sashiko Type 3 jacket in olive, $355, which, yeah, that's expensive for a jacket, but not really in the world of like Japanese kind of stuff. You know, you can easily pay into the $500 range for denim, especially when you look at brands like Ironheart and stuff like that. But this thing looks awesome. Now, I don't know about the fit. Again, I'm kind of a weird fit. I also, frankly, don't need any more jackets, but this is very, very intriguing. It looks great. I love the fact that it's olive. It's green. It's not blue, which is what you always see. So I don't know, man. This thing looks amazing, and I really, really am trying hard not to buy it. All right, one of the issues with Western shirts, in my opinion, right, especially living in New England, where sometimes if you go too Western with your work, or with your shirts and with your clothing, you almost look like you're a transplant or like you're cosplaying. Now, yeah, you should be able to wear whatever you want, and I encourage you to do so. You know, whatever. I mean, let the haters hate. But sometimes a brand will do a little bit of a compromise where it looks really, really good. So Ironheart has done just that with their single yoke Western shirt. So this is 10-ounce blue. Is it chambray? Yes, it's chambray, which I love. But basically what they've done is they've given you that cool rear yoke, which sort of has like a V. And I always thought that was a really cool look, personally. I like that a lot rather than a straight yoke. And I almost wonder if there isn't a little bit more stretch. So if you don't know, this is actually from like, it's funny we're talking about classic tailoring. One of the things that some companies will do with their upper yoke is they'll cut it on the bias, which basically means that, you know, you have your yarns that go this way and you have your threads that go this way. When they're going straight down and straight across, you can't really pull them anymore, okay? But when you turn that on a 45-degree angle, there is some stretch this way because those yarns are pulling this way, right? There's less tension that way. And so whenever you see something that's called it's called cut on the bias, and it almost makes me wonder if that helps mobility with this. But regardless, let's say that you don't care about mobility, you just like the way it looks. Well, what they did is they kept the front yoke, rather than coming down to a point like they normally do on the shoulders. They eliminated that, which is kind of neat because it sort of has a little Western flair to it. Even look at the pockets. Those are a little bit dipped and they have kind of a point to them, which is really cool. Of course, you have the snaps, which are like those mother of pearl type snaps. So you have some Western flair, but not so much that it looks out of place. This is a shirt that I would absolutely rock here in New England, where Western wear is not very common. And people might just say, hey, that's a cool looking shirt. But you don't look like, you know, a denim cowboy. And I think they did a great job with this. All right, so I wanted to talk to you about this because I found this on the Helm Boots website, but it looks to me that this is actually by Helm Boots. It's called the Winslow by Korchmar. Yeah, I don't know exactly what that is. But I do want to know what this is. This is a waste basket. All right, so if you had ever told me that I'd be talking about a waste basket on this channel or any channel, I would have called you a damn liar, but here we are anyway. Now, I don't necessarily, I hesitate to say that I recommend this, but let's say you have an office which, you can't really hide a lot of stuff. So in my workspace, I have this ugly plastic trash can that basically takes trash can liners and I throw it out. But if you're somebody who's really into the way that your workspace looks, because let's face it, functionality, all it really needs to do is hold a trash can liner, and then that's it. But let's say that you have a place where you can't hide it, or everything's out in the open and you want it to look a certain way. Well, actually, I gotta say, these do look pretty cool. I've never ever said that about a trash can before, and I think this is a very specific use case. This is not something you're gonna want to hide away under the sink or anything, but it looks really cool, and it's $145, which is expensive. But when you consider that this thing is made out of wood and leather, it's like, wow, that's really cool. Now, I can also see this being just a bridge too far for a lot of people, where it's like, okay, come on, like now we're talking about leather waste can, waste paper basket, trash can, whatever you want to call it. Have you lost your mind? I just think that it was so interesting and different, and like there's probably a certain type of person who would get this. And as I look at it, I wonder if I'm not that guy. I mean, especially in a spot like this, up here in my studio where I do have people over and guests and stuff like that, to be able to put this in the corner rather than just like a plain old gross looking, well, it's not that gross, but you know what I mean, plain old plastic bin, might be kind of neat. So again, I think that this is a very specific use case, but it's neat nonetheless. And hey, it's a break from boots and jackets and all that stuff. There's not a lot coming out right now, okay? So I'm reduced to talking about waste paper baskets. I'm sorry. Filson has come out with their new Smokey the Bear line of clothing, right? So they'll do this every year or a couple times a year. And so they have a Smokey Bear kind of license agreement or whatever. And now, if you are maybe not familiar with who Smokey the Bear is, or, I don't know if that's just an American thing or whatnot, but more or less what it is it's a bear who's sort of dressed up as a forest ranger, and his whole thing is to prevent forest fires. A lot of forest fires are caused by kind of careless campers who don't understand how to put out a fire appropriately. Now, here's the thing, okay? Like, you would think, oh, well, appropriately put out a fire? What do? Dump water on it? No. And if you've ever had a fire before, I mean, I've had many, many fires. What you're supposed to do is dump water on it, stir it around, all the coals and everything, and then put water on it again. Because then what ends up happening, and I've actually had this happen to me, you'll pour water on it, the thing will smoke like crazy, the steam, everything will come up, and you're like, all right, that thing's out, it's not relighting. What you don't understand is that, you've kind of covered the top, and underneath that, the embers that are burning can actually reignite that wood, and I've woken up in the morning to a fire that's going that I put out the night before. So that's not a big deal when you're sleeping there and you wake up and it's still going, but if you put that thing out, or you think you did, and you walk away and it reignites, well, that can cause all kinds of problems, especially if it's a campsite in the forest. So that's kind of the whole Smokey Bear thing. They come out with a bunch of these things. I think they're pretty neat looking. I also am not going to pay $50 to $55 for a t-shirt. That's just not going to happen. But I do know these are very collectible as well. There's a lot of people who like these, and I like the Smokey the Bear character. It reminds me of my childhood. It's just kind of neat. And, so whatever. I also have a little bit of a story about Smokey the Bear. So when I worked for a place called Edward Motor Service, and I don't mind saying that now because it's out of business, the owner was an interesting fellow. I owe him a lot. Really good guy, but he was also very quirky. So he he bought a fire truck. This was like a 1930s, 1940s open cab ladder fire truck, okay? Now, I don't know where he got it, but knowing him, he probably traded something for it and then whatever. So he got it, and he thought it'd be a great idea to have this thing, letter it up with the Edward Motor Service kind of, lettering on it, and then drive it through the parades that we have in town, where there's a couple. There's one for Memorial Day, and they actually just had a fireman's parade. So we have 2 or 3 parades in town every year. They're really fun. We always take the kids to them and stuff like that. And he thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to letter up this fire truck with the Edward Motors stuff on there, and then whatever, and you can drive it. Meaning I could drive this damn thing at a snail's pace in the parade. I'm not a fireman. I don't know, you know what I mean? And what do I know? I'm a mechanic, right? And there I am driving a fire truck. So anyway, he had it lettered up, and he had a thing on the back that said Smokey, Smokey the Bear says, don't start forest fires, something like that. However, the lettering company didn't put Smokey, because Smokey is Smokey. They put Smoky. Smokey the Bear. And nobody really noticed it, or if they did, they didn't tell him. And I would say for probably 3 solid years, I drove that fire truck in various parades with random people on the back and on the sideboards and all that stuff hanging on, and with a misspelling of Smokey the Bear on the back. And there I am, a mechanic, driving this big, stupid fire truck, no power steering, through. It was the most ridiculous thing I had ever seen. And every year we had to get this thing started. We'd park it in like the backyard somewhere. And every year before parade season, of course, it was never covered. We'd go down there after the winter and try to get it started. And there was one time we were driving that thing back, and I couldn't get it to run for anything. However, if you sprayed starting fluid in it, it would go. So I'm like, oh, well, you know what? To nurse this thing back to the shop, which is about a half mile away, why don't you just, the guy who I was with was like, why don't you just open up the hood? Because it was like those hoods that open up from the sides, and just spray that, the starting fluid in there, and we'll just kind of make it back on that. And that's the way we did. We were just going through town. He's sitting there on the sideboard, spraying that in there, and I'm just driving it real slow. People must have been driving by and be like, there goes the Edward Motors guys again, because that was not the craziest thing that we had done, probably even that day. It was a good time. It was an interesting. I have so many stories from that that damn shop, which I'll share with you at some point. But my God. Anyway, Smokey the Bear. If you want to get some Smokey stuff from Filson, go for it. Just make sure it's spelled right. Here's something that is very different again, right? So we're talking about summer. There's not a whole lot coming out right now. A lot of companies are starting to gear up for their fall drops, which, save up some money, because a lot of cool stuff is going to be coming out, guaranteed. But this thing I saw, and I was like, that is pretty cool. So this is from Arterton, London. This is from Fox Umbrellas, and it's their GT29 nickel bulldog head umbrella. So this thing looks crazy. Now, it's a fabric canopy. It looks really cool. This stuff is made in England. But I think the thing that everybody's looking at is the bulldog head that's on the end of this. So a lot of times, now I don't know the terminology for an umbrella, but the little part that's like a U shape, so you can hang it on things. Well, that kind of comes off, and it's this like chrome plated bulldog's head, and it looks like something a villain should be carrying. I mean, I could just see like carrying this thing around, right? Knocking on people's doors with it for some reason, maybe like whacking a couple people with it or something. Like, I never think of getting a good high quality umbrella. I've been using the same crappy one that probably has some corporate logo on it forever. But I saw this and I was like, you know what? Maybe I need an umbrella fit for a villain. Maybe that's what I'm missing in life. Then after I get that, my life will be complete. I don't know. I mean, it's kind of out there, and it's so unique that I was like, this is it's interesting. So it's 141 GBP, which I think that'd probably put it, in like the $150, $160 range, which, you know what? I mean, for all the stuff that goes into an umbrella, it's still high end, but it's, not like crazy. So either way, I saw that and I was like, maybe that's what I need. I need something to like make me a villain, and this would help. Okay, for our weird pick this week, look, this is not the first time that I've come across this name, this Junya Watanabe guy. I gotta tell you, I am not a fan. Like, the stuff that I've seen, it's, the thing that he did with Filson a while back, with the faux leather and synthetic denim, I'm like, right there, you lost me. I don't care what this thing looks like. And then the price, I was just like, I'm out. I don't get it. I'm just not interested. And then some people did help explain kind of the thought process behind it, right? He's this designer and yada, yada, yada. But to me, I don't understand buying clothes that look so outlandish that like nobody's going to wear them. And actually, somebody had commented last week that a lot of these things somebody will buy and they'll wear once, and then they'll put them back in their closet, never to see the light of day. And so I guess there must be just a whole other side of consumer that I'm not familiar with. You know what I mean? Those are people who have money to burn, and you know, I just don't understand that, especially when you kind of, like me, try to seek out value, right? But when you're not looking for value and you're looking for fashion, maybe this is it. This is the Junya Watanabe Man men's trench coat in beige. Now, here's the good news. This is half off. Originally, it was just about $2,000. Now you can get it for $1,014. Though I don't know why anybody would. So it looks like you have a trench coat with a fisherman's vest on top of it. I guess you get points for originality. Those are two things that I've really never seen put together. Now, I've seen people wear fisherman's vests. Usually they're wearing it over some sort of, you know, something to keep the bugs away or whatever. I've never seen it with a trench coat on. I've also never seen it where it hasn't been used with somebody who's wearing like hip waders, right? So oftentimes I'll go down by the river here and I'll see somebody out there and they're standing in the middle of the river and they're fishing and they got their fishing vest on because everything you need is right there. So it's stored. So you don't have to go back onto the shore. I mean, you can have a tackle box if you're on shore, but when you're out in the middle of the river, you're kind of like a one-man unit, right? I've also seen people who are in boats wearing these things, and none of them have ever been wearing a trench coat. So I think as far as actual use as a sporting thing, this is out. Number one, nobody's going to pay that amount of money to use this in that condition. So that's not the application. The application for style, however, it's a trench coat, as I mentioned. So, you know, that's a classic thing. But to throw this thing on top of that, why? You know, I mean, like, it has these little tiny compartments, which are supposed to be meant for like lures and hooks and all kinds of stuff like that. But why would you have this? Why would you ever walk around with that? And who would think that's a cool jacket you got on there? I'd be thinking, like, why are you wearing your dad's fisherman vest over that trench coat? It makes no sense to me. I don't get it. I really don't get it. If you do, clue me in, because I'm lost. I'm totally lost. So that's the weird pick. Why you would buy this, I don't know. Now, if you saw my video this week, this is the little piece of the Russell moccasin that I cut apart. And I just want to be clear with the Russell moccasin thing. They actually sent me a pair of like defective boots, right? Well, not defective, but there was a ton of loose grain on one side. And so I was able to kind of hide that from the camera, and then I whacked the toe off of it, which is right here. And as a matter of fact, I don't know if any of my patrons want this, I'll send it to you. You can have it. But I really don't like doing that to footwear. I mean, in this case, I think you really did kind of need to see the inside of the boot and see the way they did the double vamp construction. I also wanted to see it because I had never seen the inside of one of these before, and all the handwork that goes into it, the stitching, really impressive stuff. But just so you know, I did not take an $800 pair of boots and just whack the toe off the thing. That was actually a pair that either wasn't going to be offered to the public, or maybe it might have made it into like the seconds section. I don't know, but the loose grain was pretty rough on it, so maybe not. But I don't like killing these things. I genuinely enjoy this stuff. And to destroy something that is, you know, somebody put a lot of hard work into, it just feels kind of icky to me. So I'm not saying that I won't do it in the future. I mean, I prefer to do it with, you know, products that either, you know, suck, so you can see how they're made. And I mean, like, they almost don't deserve it. Or if it's a second like that. But those things are so nice. And I got to tell you, I have gotten a ton of use of them, out of them. Even after that review, I continue to wear those Russell moccasins. They're really, really nice. Now, I know the price tag is high, but when you see the amount of stitch work that goes into them, I start to understand why that is. But anyway, this little guy right here is just sitting up on my shelf for the time being. And like I said, maybe if a patron wants it, I'll send it to him. But that was a fun video. And I think it was something that I had been, I had wanted to do on my channel for a while. So I'm really glad that it's out there. So hopefully you've checked that out and let me know what you think. All right, we're going to go to the patrons section. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't joined my Patreon, you can. There's a link somewhere around here, and you can come and check it out. It's like $3 a month if you want to just watch the videos. You get them early access, And you get, of course, like the extra 10, 15 minutes or whatever we do on these every week. So if that sounds interesting to you, then great, go check it out. If not, no worries. I'm still going to be here, and you know, you're okay in my book. Anyway, we're going to move to the patron section, but the rest of you have a great week.